Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness. This is episode 132.
Welcome to the Let's Be Well Together podcast. I'm Noura, Saad, and I'm here with John Webster today. John, I wanted to hear what's on your mind.
Well, I really like that you're getting ideas and you're shooting them to me. And I want to talk about one of them. And so you asked this question. You said, during your life and career, have you ever experienced being talked out of doing something you so deeply in your heart wanted to do? And basically you asked if that happened, then, did you regret it looking backwards? And yeah, let's talk about that. Maybe we could both come up with a couple examples.
Yeah. You having experienced success in your life, John, career-wise, and I'm sure in other avenues, have you experienced this yourself? And if so, please share. I'd love to hear it.
I have definitely experienced this and kind of at a really important point in my work too. And so here was the scenario. So I grew up in Kitchener-Waterloo. So did my wife. Our family's here. But once we moved out, and I had no intention of being a lawyer when I moved away from town. Sheila was in Montreal and she was at a scholarship in Montreal for ballet. And so I decided to finish my philosophy studies in Montreal. And eventually I decided to go to law school and I got in. So I studied law. But for whatever reason, once we moved away, it wasn't like, oh, thank goodness we're gone. We just thought, well, once you're in Montreal and then in law school and I got a job in Toronto, you just don't think you'll ever come back. But I was working at a big firm in Toronto, not the same one I'm at now. Really great firm, really great people, having a pretty good time. But there were a couple of reasons why I wanted to make a shift and try and get more on the front lines of litigation. That's a different story. But then I also was talking to Sheila and I thought I should go home. Let's go see if I'm going to move anyway, maybe it is time to go back to KW. We'll be closer to family and all that stuff. And I ran into somebody at an examination for discovery, a lawyer who's acting for a co-defendant. Mm. And during the course of a few days, we hit it off. And he basically said, you should come and work at my firm. And I said to him at one point, well, I want to move back to KW. So that's what I'm thinking of. I really appreciate you saying that, but I'm thinking of moving back to KW. And he talked me out of it. He basically said, and now in retrospect, it just seems like such a crazy thing to have believed and him to have said, but he said, don't give up yet. Toronto's where everything happens. If you go back to KW, it's like you're giving up. I don't know if that's the reason, but I didn't argue with him. Anyway, skip forward years later, that wasn't an ideal place to be for different reasons. And I still felt the calling to KW. And among other things, because of all the commuting I had to do, living in Oakville and Campbellville and going into Toronto, being on GO trains 3 hours a day at times, I had no time to do anything. I got way overweight. I was not in a good frame of mind. And so anyway, it's a long-winded way of saying that once I moved back to KW, everything changed for the better, right? I'm at a great firm. I'm doing great work. I have time to exercise. I see family. I'm just so much happier. I have such a balanced life. It's a beautiful community. I reintegrated into it. And so, yeah, I basically lost 10 or 11 years because I let someone talk me out of coming home and staying in Toronto.
May I ask, did you have a gut feeling that that was the right thing for you to do?
I actually had the gut feeling that I did the right thing it was to do. But in retrospect, there was a lot of great things about that job and a lot of things I learned, and a lot of it went into making me who I am. But ultimately, I probably would have been a lot better off coming home earlier.
But you did it eventually.
I did it eventually.
So I'm sure years later, you're happy. Yep.
Yeah. So, these things do have consequences. And I was also a newer lawyer, right? And I was in a position where someone could, I'm not going to say manipulate me, but persuade me before I knew too much. So that's a really dangerous time in your career, actually, where you're seeing all these possibilities and you let somebody tell you that it's all going to work out. And then you kind of ignore what's going on in your gut and your mind.
Yes.
What about you? Have
yes.
you had any kind of experiences like that?
Well, I will say in my earlier days, my younger days, I think the word is just being very impressionable. And yes, I have been victim to that. And yes, John, I can think of one particular time when I really wanted to go on this exciting trip. And it was with people that I've known. And I knew it was going to be a good time. And when I shared it with my family, they were very resistant to it and encouraged me not to, given the destination I was going to. They had the belief that it was going to be very dangerous. And I remember at the time, again, my gut feeling came out and was just like, no, Noura, you got to go. You know these people and you're going to be safe. And I ended up going. And to be honest, John, it was the best decision I made. I look back to that trip and it was one of the best trips I've ever gone on, some of the best memories. And yeah, I mean, this is a little bit on a smaller scale than your story. However, I think you're right. In retrospect, I'm thankful and I'm glad I did it, because then I don't get to regret not going and having some of these experiences. And I think sometimes we need to be uncomfortable and be scared and not know what's on the other side. And then when we overcome that, there's just so much success there. And again, great memories and, you know, resilience that's built. I'm very thankful for that time.
Was there any fallout with the family?
No, thankfully not. No.
But that's, I was kind of expecting you to say that, which is good. Like sometimes too, we read too much into what we think people are going to do, especially once you get to a certain age, whether you're a child or a sister, brother, whatever, people ultimately respect it. Like they give you their impression because they're trying to protect you and they're trying to give good advice. But if you're like, well, thank you, I appreciate that, but I still want to do what I'm going to do. A lot of times there isn't that negative fallout that you think it's going to happen, but it doesn't.
Yes, I agree 100%, John. Yes, we do tend to get ahead of ourselves. But yeah, no, it was a great trip and nobody was mad at me. I brought home gifts, so they couldn't be mad. Yeah.
So I was out for my run this morning and I was thinking about this question, and actually I remembered something I wish I didn't. So here's something I talked myself out of doing, and I definitely regret it. And I've regretted it for a long time. It's so stupid, Noura. So I was in law school. So when I got to law school, I had kind of a checkered history at university. When I applied myself, I did great. When I didn't apply myself, not so much. So I decided to use law school as a test. I was going to apply myself for 3 years and see how things went. So I worked really hard. Fortunately, I did really well. But I also, the way law school works is you read a lot of cases and you go to a lot of classes, and there's kind of like a few points from each thing you learn, and people use what are called outlines. So you make an outline for criminal law and for contract law, and it's all these points. Well, I decided to make my own. And so I did for each course, and getting kind of towards 2/3 into the first year, and it's 100% finals too. So you go to school all year and get 100% final where I went. And so kind of 3/4 of the way into the year, people started to ask if I would share my outlines. And for whatever reason, I wouldn't. Like I talked myself into thinking it's a zero-sum game. If I give it to them, then I'll do worse. And it was also stupid because I had done them all, like nobody can kind of catch up to where I was. Nothing would have affected whether the profs liked the answers I gave. And it's something I've regretted ever since law school, which was all these years ago. It's like, why didn't I share my outline? Why didn't I help these other people? And I really wish I could go back in time. So thanks a lot, Noura. I was out running today, starting to feel bad.
Well, I mean, it gets the seed planted for sure, John. But do you have connections with these past classmates that you can share that, or is that it's just kind of?
Well, it's useless. I mean, the point was they needed it to study for the exams. And a lot of people like shared outlines or did outlines, but I was kind of flying solo. But they knew that they were good outlines, and so I really should have shared them. And, and I think a lot of us there's people who say, I don't regret anything I've done in my life. I am not one of those people. I have lots of regrets. And that's definitely one. And if I could go back in history, I would have talked myself into being way more generous and way more thinking more broadly and seeing that we're all better off if we act that way. Sure.
And I think even, John, just our confidence in our own work and our own abilities. Sometimes we think that our work isn't good enough, or it's not, informative enough, I guess, in this case. But I think just having confidence, and that's why they're coming to you asking for these outlines, also speaks to, your capabilities at that time. So I think there's also some grace and just being confident in ourselves as well.
It's a great point, because the truth was I wasn't confident. And I was afraid that, if they looked at it, it'd be like, they might say something about it, or it might, I was already feeling like I was behind the 8 ball, and these exams are 100% of my mark, and I didn't know how I was going to do. And you're right. So having that confidence allows you to have more grace. And again, I wish I had that too. But there is a quick anecdote too of being talked into something that affects this podcast, which is I had a big argument with Sheila trying to talk her into me not doing it. And she said I should do it. And anyway, I'm not going to get back into all the reasons why, but she convinced me I should. And now I'm really happy she did. So it goes both ways. I've been talked out of things I wished I'd done. I've been talked into things I'm glad I'm done. All right. Well, we're up against the time. So thanks very much, Noura. It was a great question, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you again.
Thanks, John.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds.
Today's interview is in the category of mental wellness. When you think about lawyers and judges, what do you imagine is their state of mind? Calm, focused, confident, together? A group of Canadian lawyers and judges worked together to create a book, The Right Not to Remain Silent, The Truth About Mental Health in the Legal Profession. And today we're speaking with one of those people. Welcome, Michael Herman.
Thank you, John. It's nice to be with you again, and I appreciate the invitation.
Michael Herman is a lawyer with and general counsel to the Canadian offices of international law firm Gowling WLG. And as general counsel, Michael provides legal advice to the law firm and plays many other important roles. Michael's also highly regarded as a strategic advisor to a broad range of clients. He's busy in his role as GC, and we all benefit from his advice. And I work with Michael as part of our firm's GC team. Michael's a strong advocate for mental health in the legal community. He works to raise awareness of and eliminate stigma, and he hopes to make it easier for anyone experiencing mental illness to come forward and seek help without fear of judgment. So Michael, thanks for joining us to chat about the book, which contains a series of candid and courageous memoirs by members of the legal profession living with mental health and addiction issues. So maybe I could start by asking, who are some of the people who contributed?
Thanks, John. We had contributions. There's 18 chapters in the book. We had contributions from judges, including the former Chief Justice of Ontario, lawyers in the private sector, with large firms, with small firms, in-house lawyers, public sector lawyers, people in large markets, people in smaller markets. So we had a wide range of people within the profession generally who contributed to the book. In addition, there's a chapter or the foreword by Dr. David Goldblum, who is probably the preeminent psychiatrist in Canada and has been for many years, and by a group of researchers and clinicians at CAMH, the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, who provided insights on the latest treatments for depression and anxiety. So it covers a wide gamut.
And how did the book come about?
The book came about primarily through the efforts of Beth Beattie, who is with the Ministry of the Attorney General, Ontario, and Carole Dagher, who is in-house counsel with Loblaws and the Weston Group. Beth has been one of the spearheads of the Law Society of Ontario's Mental Health Summit, which has been held annually for the last 4 years, and has included people who talk about their lived experience with a wide variety of mental health and wellness issues.
Well, Beth Beattie didn't only have a hand in starting the book, but you may not know this, but she also helped me start the podcast because Beth was my first guest on episodes 1 and 2. It was really an amazing discussion, and I was lucky to chat with her.
You were lucky to chat with her. Beth is an amazing person, and she's a force of nature, as is Carole. They had a conversation back in 2022, the middle of 2022, which was after a very large research study about mental health and lawyers. We've known for many years that members of the legal profession suffer from rates of depression, anxiety, substance misuse, which are really high, much higher than the general population. And it's only in the last few years that the legal profession has really started to grapple with the issue and try and understand it. And this study came out, and the results were confirmation of what we already knew, but in a much more comprehensive form.
Well, you say what we already knew, but that's kind of when I let off. I think a lot of people, when they think of lawyers and judges, this would come as a surprise to find out many of us are struggling with different mental health issues.
I think that may be true for those outside the legal profession, and it's understandable, but there are a number of reasons for why we think that lawyers and those who are part of the legal profession, and it goes back to law school and how law school operate and the messages that students get in law school, and then continue through the career path of lawyers as they develop. So there are structural reasons why some of these issues manifest so much more in lawyers than the general population. And then there's the nature of lawyers themselves and the things that they deal with. And that also contributes to the reasons why they seem to be affected more than other people. It is important for the legal profession, as I say, we're starting to come to grips with it, to be able to really engage in a dialogue and start to raise awareness, reduce the stigma, and start to bring about change. And this book, which was the brainchild of Beth and Carole, was an effort to advance that and do it by having different lawyers tell their stories and put that out into the universe for others to be able to use it as a launch pad to advance that dialogue.
So what are some of the kind of personal stories or personal memoirs that readers can expect to hear?
So I think people will read stories about depression, severe anxiety, stories about addiction and substance misuse, about eating disorders, about self-harm, incredible stories about grief. So a wide gamut of different stories. And what all of the contributing authors were able to do, some of whom had been telling their stories publicly for some time, some of whom had not talked about their own lived experience publicly until they wrote for this book. But what they were able to do was be really honest, vulnerable, raw, and really share with the reader their experience and what that experience was like for them and the journey that they went through.
And what's the hope in terms of what the contributors are hoping to convey, or the reason why they're willing to tell these very personal stories, which is a very difficult thing to do in public?
I think the hope is that by having people be willing to speak out and to raise this awareness, that most importantly, we will hopefully one day eradicate the stigma associated with these types of conditions. But most importantly, that we start to reduce that stigma and start to make a difference in creating safe and non-judgmental environments where these discussions can occur within organizations, be it law firms, law associations, bar associations, corporations, and other types of organizations, where these discussions can be normalized, where it is okay to talk about not being okay. And I think what was striking to me when I read the other chapters, the chapters that I didn't write, was how much I think that people will see something in those chapters that resonate with them. That hopefully will give people a bit of support to be able to try and open up and be willing to have these conversations, and for organizations to allow them to occur safely.
That's a big point, actually, the making it safe to have the discussions, encouraging people to have the discussions. So there's lots of good coming out of it from kind of the reader's side, from the public side. What about as a contributor? I know that's not the reason why you did it, but as a contributor, did you gain anything from being part of this experience?
Yeah, so for me, I've been talking about my own lived experience with severe depression for a number of years now. I've written some about it. I've spoken about it quite frequently. But what was really meaningful to me was to be part of this collective of people, amazing people, ordinary but extraordinary, if you know what I mean. And to feel connected to them, and that we as a group, people who did some of, I knew a number of the people, but not all the people who have contributed to the book, but to feel part of this community of people collectively trying to pursue a common objective in what, for me, is a really important endeavor. And there was something really rewarding about that, about being able to say, hey, I'm associated with this, as I say, ordinary but extraordinary group of people. And to read their stories and to see my story as part of all of these other stories.
Well, from someone else who's trying to break down stigma in my way on the podcast, and I'm having to ask people to tell their stories as interview guests. It's really, I really appreciate that people like you are out there. I really do believe it's through these conversations where you do break down the stigma and normalize things. So that's fantastic. And what about readers? I know it's just being released recently. Are you hearing anything from readers? What kind of things have you heard?
So it's been terrific. The feedback has been excellent. The book has done very well for a book of this type in terms of sales. And we have had a lot of opportunity to have authors speak to law firms, to corporations, media. We have had a number of influential people within the legal profession and beyond who have unsolicited written reviews of the book and posted those reviews, encouraging other people to read the book. So the feedback we've gotten so far has really been excellent. And it seems to be accomplishing what we set out to try and accomplish. And I think that the idea is these are universal stories. Yes, they are written by lawyers, members of the legal profession, but the stories that are told are universal stories. They're not just about lawyers. They're about people. And so the idea is hopefully this book will also serve as a bit of a motivation for people in other industries.
Okay, so with all that in mind, is there kind of a key message that's coming out of the book?
It was interesting for me, John, when I read the manuscript. The authors didn't know what the other authors were writing when we submitted our chapters. We had an outline of the number of words we could write about, but not what we could write about. And as I read the manuscript, and again, these are tough stories. People are being really honest with their experiences. But as I read the stories, what started to emerge, and it was interwoven in different ways through each of these contributions, was hope. And so the theme that started to emerge and get stronger as the book goes along is the message of hope. It's not that people are saying, oh, I've solved all my problems, I don't have any of these issues anymore, but it's that they found their way to work through the struggles and that they are now in a position where they moved from hopeless to a little bit of belief and to hope. And so that's a key message that I think the book conveys, and it's a really important message for people to hear.
It really resonates with me too. I just know from my own personal lived experience that I've been lucky because I've gone through some rough stuff, but I've always somehow been able to have just enough spark of hope that it never quite fizzled out. And I always wonder what would have happened to me if it had fizzled out. And so it's something I keep trying to cherish and feed the best I can.
In my own personal experience, is very similar to yours, John. I found that when I was in my darkest period, I could not see any hope. Eventually, a sliver of light sort of entered into the darkness. And that was the hope. That sliver of light allowed me to start to move forward along a process. And it's a process that will last the rest of my life. But hope was the fuel that propelled me. I try to say to people, as difficult as it can be, and it can be extraordinarily difficult, if you can hold on to hope for dear life as best you can, that is something that will benefit you as you work through whatever it is you're dealing with.
Well, it sounds like a beautiful key message. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if it also was the seed that turned into the book that got everybody working together to kind of try and share that, because everyone realized how important it was in their own experiences. I
think you're right. I think you are right.
So where can people find the book?
So the book is available to purchase at LexisNexis, which is a legal publisher, LexisNexis Canada.
I'll put a link to it in my show notes. So if people look at the show notes.
And if people don't see the link, it can easily be found through Google searches. Google The Right Not to Remain Silent, and you'll quickly get a link to the LexisNexis page where the book can be ordered.
Fantastic. Okay, so here we are at the end of the interview. And as you know, from being a generous person who's been here before with a couple interviews, we ask every guest the same question in a context where we all have areas of wellness that are important to us, but not enough time to focus on all of them at any given time. So we do our little mini wellness check-in. So Michael, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one thing you could do to foster wellness in that area?
So it's interesting because I know it's part of your holistic approach to wellness. And I think it's a really important one, which is social connection. And I think that what I've noticed for myself is I was feeling a little disconnected. It's not that I don't engage with people all the time. I do in my role and my job, in my family and my friends. But it's the quality of those social connections. It's the attention I pay to them. It's the deliberateness with which I cultivate them. And so one of my sort of objectives for the next while is to pay much closer attention to really trying to create the quality of social connection with people that matter, people that make a difference for me, that people that I care about, and really focus attention on that. That's an area that I think is important. I'm reading a lot about how important it is for us as human beings, but for me to just be more careful about how I pursue it.
It's a good one because I'm an introvert myself. I am not overly social, but I'm married to an extrovert, Sheila, who's extremely social. And I was listening to her at one point. She was having a conversation with another podcast guest or host, and they were talking about it's hard work to create and keep these social networks going. And I was kind of like, oh, I'm kind of lazy about it. So it is hard work. You do have to put a meaningful effort into it to both create and extend connections. So I wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you, John. And as an introvert, I recognize as well how hard work it is.
Okay, well, thanks so much. It's so amazing that so many people in our legal community are trying to break down stigma to the extent that they're willing to share stories that must be hard to share. So good luck with the book. I hope lots of people read it and get that message of hope from it, Michael.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me.
We hope you're enjoying the show, and we hope you're finding ways to foster wellness in the categories that are important to you. If you like what you're hearing, head to our website, letsbewelltogether.com, and then to the archives page. It includes a quick summary of the different segments of all of our shows back to the start. Have a look and see if there's something interesting you want to listen to, and listen to one of our past episodes. There's a thought. Popped up while running. I talked about an analogy from Michael Singer's book, Untethered Soul. And this week I was thinking about this. One other thing he said, it's just, I don't know, it just really resonated with me. I love it. He was talking about how everybody is different. People are also different. And we often think about that. I love the concept of diversity and how we all bring something different. And I often try and appreciate that. What he said is, imagine that people are flowers. And so if you go to a botanical garden or something like that, or you go to a beautiful garden, you see all these different flowers, and each one's not only beautiful in themselves, but the combination is beautiful as well. Anyway, I just had that thought in my mind. It was giving me a really good feeling, and it enhanced my run.
I'm Cameron, and welcome to another installment of The Adventures of the Starving Artist. As I sit down to record this segment, it occurs to me that this is one of the first times in a while where I've sat down and not had to immediately get up and rush off to a gig or a rehearsal or a lesson or some other engagement. So it's kind of nice, and I'm enjoying the moment here, just being one with the chair and having a breather. It's been very go, go, go for me the past little while. All good stuff, though. And one of the things that helps get through that is taking time to be a person. I've been gigging like crazy lately. That and the upcoming summer camps that that Rockstar is running. It's just a really busy time, even though the one-on-one lessons tend to slow down a bit in the summer months because people are taking vacations and stuff. So where one thing starts to ease up a bit, other things really start to ramp up. And like I said, it's been really go, go, go. One of the things that I love about the bands that I play with is that we're all working musicians, so everyone kind of gets it. We're all in a similar sort of situation. Details, of course, differ between person to person and all that, but, many of us teach as well as perform. Others are holding down other jobs during the daytime. Others are still just full-time music. So as you network and perform with other musicians, you get to see, hey, I'm not alone in this, and other people are familiar with the lifestyle that you're living, and it's kind of nice. But specifically, what I wanted to mention is one of the things that I love about playing with the Shania band that I'm with, or the members in that band, I should say. It's not the only band that we play as with that lineup. They have another group that they call themselves the Vanduras, and then there's another splinter group off the same band called the Silverados, and I've had the privilege of playing with both of those lineups before. But one of the things I love about playing with these guys in particular is that we have this thing, they have this tradition. It's a band dinner. So before a gig, we all get there early to help set up, and in the downtime before the actual performance, we'll all order meals and eat together around the same table and chat. And it's really good. It truly is like a little band family. So I've really been enjoying that. And those glimmers of being a real person are most welcome. I hope you're having a great week. If you're in a whirlwind like myself, hang in there and enjoy the sunshine. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Till next time.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
And it's sign-off time. It's Sheila here with Elise and John.
Hello.
Well, we had a busy week this week cleaning out our back room. That
The basement back room.
took the whole time. But for me, what I wanted to talk about was all my business papers. I have kept all my business records because I had to for many years. And that time is over now. So I started to shred. And it took me a whole week.
It was crazy.
A whole week of shredding. But I got it all done. So that was a feat. I'm happy it's over. But one more thing I would like to say is this Wednesday morning, Ben Flanagan, who has been a guest on our podcast, who is my nephew, will be running in the Olympics in Paris. So this is very exciting. He's going to be running at 5:10 a.m. If anyone wants to get up and watch it, we're really rooting for him and hoping for the best. So that is exciting. What about you, John?
I will definitely be there cheering him on. It was great to talk to him, and at the time he didn't know if he would be able to make the Olympics. So it was incredible when he did. And now to be able to watch him running, it's going to be fantastic. And I know he's got his sights set high, and he should. And that's fantastic. And so we're going to be cheering him on to do the best he can be. So then turning back to my kind of mundane life, but I keep talking about it. It's not always the big things where you improve your wellness, and cleaning out that basement and back room has really been a relief because I was worried like what's underneath the boxes, what's in the boxes, what do I have? So I opened every box. I looked in everything. There's just one shelf we still need to work through. I can't believe some of this stuff we had. So we took a whole bunch of stuff to the thrift shop. I finally decided that there's no point saving all the old wires from all the old things like old TVs and old computers. I literally had an entire big garbage bag full of wires.
Yeah.
Wires and cables, Cat 5 cables, cables, phone cables, old computer plugs. And so, we did it. We had a whole carload of stuff that went to the e-waste. Mm-hmm. And now our back room, I can walk in it. I even have my gym set up a lot better in it. And I even got my Concept 2 rower has a place now and I can use it. So it's fantastic. And not only is my mind feeling better, but now I'll be able to get my body moving better because I've got better access to gym stuff in my rower again. So I'm really happy and it's really put me in a good frame of mind. How are you doing, Elise?
I'm doing great. And that's the kind of job that you never really want to do, but it helps so much when you do actually do it. So that's amazing that you guys are getting it done.
That's partially like it was on my mind for probably 3 years. And like, when am I ever going to do it? And it took weeks because you have to start small and just start and then eventually get to the point where you can do a whole lot. But no, you're right, Elise. It's something that's just never get to, and it always bugs me.
Well, that's amazing that you're doing it. This past week, I've really been enjoying watching the Olympics, actually, which is something I don't typically do. I know the past few Olympics, I've never had cable, so I've never really been able to enjoy the Olympics, but now you can watch it on so many different free streaming services. Mm-hmm. So I've been having a really good time tuning into some really great matches and seeing some amazing events. I know I witnessed a country getting their very first medal ever in the Olympics. And yeah, St. Lucia got their first medal ever, and she got a gold in, I think it was the 100 meters.
Wow.
And it's just so exciting to celebrate those kind of moments in the Olympics.
Yeah.
So I've really been enjoying that. As I have the summer off, I'm kind of able to tune in on some of the big events. So that's been really fun. And I'm really looking forward to cheering Ben on this Wednesday for his race. So thank you so much for joining us this week on our episode of Let's Be Well Together. We hope that you're able to join us again soon.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.